Welcome back, everyone, to the Choose to Think Inspirational Podcast. We have a special guest on the show today, and her name is Martha Bolton. Let me tell you about Martha. She is the author of 88 books. Okay, so I have like 3 books, and Martha has 88. You're like, what? She's an Emmy nominee, a Dove Award nominee, and the quote, with author on 3 New York Times bestselling books. She's amazing. She was nominated for a Writers Guild Award for the Emmy-winning Bob Hope, The First 90 Years. Martha was Bob's first full-time female staff writer and wrote for his TV specials, personal appearances, and special events. She's also written for Phyllis Diller. Now, some of these, like Bob Hope and Phyllis Diller, if you're of the younger generation and listeners on the show, you might think, who are those people? Go look them up. But she's written for them. Mark Lowry, a Christian comedian and singer, you might know him. Shonda Pierce, oh my goodness, Shonda Pierce. We love Shonda Pierce. Jeff Allen, and numerous others. Since 2010, she spent much of her time developing and writing projects that are fun, engaging, intense, and hilarious for Blue Gate musicals. As a matter of fact, we start by talking with the Confession musical. She was the playwright for the Confession musical, which airs here shortly. I want you to go make sure that you see that. And here's what that particular movie is all about. You're going to love it. I'm going to read the short synopsis here. It's 2 worlds collide when a young Amish girl discovers she was adopted. Okay. As she seeks her biological family, she has to overcome the obstacles of a lost fiance, a shunning, you know what that is, a shunning, and a crafty gold digger who seeks the fortune of her birth mother. Now, I want to tell you about some of the folks in this actual, what's so curious about it is it's a musical, but it's a movie. So you get kind of both feels there. It's just so beautifully done. You may recognize John Schneider is Dylan. That's the gold-digging husband in the show, and it's played by John Schneider. And then, of course, I already mentioned the Christian maidservant, which is played by Shonda Pierce. So Shonda Pierce is also in there. So we just chatted so candidly. We talked about the Confession musical movie. We talked about Martha Bolton herself and how her career, the trajectory of her career and how she started. We talked about when she came to know the Lord. We talked about Bob Hope because she wrote for Bob Hope, and she's written recently, put together with Bob Hope's daughter, a book that catalogs many of the letters that Bob wrote to some of the World War II veterans and service individuals. So we kind of talk about that as well. And we talk about laughter. And I really love that segment because I kind of picked her. I mean, how do you even write jokes? How do you write jokes for other people? What's the connection and all of that? So we get into some of that. And it was just so curious, so interesting, and really funny. And I just enjoyed my time with her. And I can't wait for you to see the Confession musical. We're 21st century Christians, and media, this is a form of media. We need to support Christian faith-based media in any way, shape, or form that we can. This is one way. Plus, you get entertained when you do it. So go to the movie, see that movie, or if you're watching this or listening to this after the episode has dropped, please invest in that particular movie, and you'll be able to buy it, I'm sure, at different places. So go ahead and get your copy of that. It's a small way, it's a small investment for you to support folks who are trying to put out movies and media with family values, where you don't have to worry about fast forwarding through scenes. You don't have to worry about the F-bomb being dropped, or God's name taken in vain, or a gazillion other things. You can sit back and enjoy. You can be inspired. You can learn something, and you can leave the theater feeling like, wow, I just saw something powerfully important, something that impacts my life, something that encourages me to be a better person even in this world. So please support Christian and faith-based media. Without further ado, here's Martha. Welcome to the show, Martha. We're so glad to have you here.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, well, we're just going to take a deep dive, and everyone knows about you already professionally and some of your amazing adventures in life. But can you kind of peel back the layer here, the top here, and just tell us, who is Martha, and maybe even share your salvation experience with everyone? I'd love to know that.
Well, I started writing when I was 9 years old. I wrote a little book called No Fun Being Young about being the youngest of 5 kids.
Wow.
And I still have it. I saved it all these years. But I just love to write. That's where I feel I processed life at that young age and continue to do so to this day. And in those books, the little composition books, I talk about when I gave my life to the Lord, which was around 6 years old. And so I write about that. And I grew up in the church. My brother was a preacher. I was raised in the church. My uncle was a preacher, and just grew up there. And that's where I started writing as far as for other people. I wrote for myself. I wrote poetry, taped it on the wall above my bed, by my bed. I had all these poems up there, and always knew that writing would be a hobby, but I never ever dreamed or even thought about it being a career. I just didn't equate the two, that you could do that for a living. So that's where I got my start. And then when life dealt a couple of blows right after I got married young at 18, and my husband was 22. And then we experienced, when we started to want to have a family, we experienced some hardships and had a miscarriage and then a full-term stillbirth. And to get out of the house, I want not to get out from him, but to just get my mind on other things besides the tragedies we were dealing with. The church I knew they were looking for a secretary, so I thought, well, that might be kind of fun. And you don't realize these little steps you take that are in God's plan, but you don't see it. And through that, I started writing church plays. I started doing like the Friars Club roast. I would roast the pastor, like the Dean Martin roast as well.
Yes.
And got known throughout our community as doing this. So other churches would call me to roast their pastor or somebody in their church. Wow. And different business people. So that's where I started. That's who I am. I do speak, but I feel very comfortable behind the typewriter. That's where I love to be. I love writing for other comedians. I love writing plays. All of that was birthed back then, all throughout my life. So I've just continued on that path, and God has just opened up doors. And there was a moment early in my career where I was at a conference, writers conference, where you stood and dedicated your writing to God. And I did that, just me and, just among everybody else that was doing it. But I wanted to dedicate it. And then also when things started happening in the secular world, to where I had the opportunity to write for secular comedians, and then came on staff with Bob Hope, I always still had the church work, that I wanted that to go along with the other. I didn't want to turn my back on one and go full speed ahead in the other world. I wanted both worlds to, I just wanted to write in both worlds, and I've been able to do that. I look back on my career and I can see God's hand throughout the whole thing and the different doors that he opened. So.
Oh, I bet. And just to be so like uber basic here, you were the playwright for the Confession musical, correct? The playwright.
Correct.
What
Correct.
is a playwright?
Well, we took Beverly Lewis. Everybody knows who Beverly Lewis is.
Yes.
We took her trilogy, and that was what we were going to do a musical about. So I took parts. I read all 3 books and underlined and dog-eared all the places that I thought would be a good scene, and the different characters, because obviously you can't take 3 full novels and put it all on stage, or it'd be a 12-hour musical or longer. Yeah. So I picked, different scenes that I thought would make a good scene, and different characters, and I added comedy in it with several characters that I thought could have comedy. They could be the comic relief, because the topics are pretty heavy. So I felt it needed comic relief. So the Dylan character, who is the husband in the English world of a wealthy woman. So I had a lot of fun with that. And John Schneider plays that role, and he does an excellent job.
Yes, he does.
So there's a lot of comedy with him, or at his expense anyway. But he does great. And then Shonda, her character, there was a lot of room there to add comedy to her character, who was the dying woman's best friend, and she's on to Dylan, so she's pretty much the one that figures it all out. But that's the process. And then from all those years of writing plays for the church, I love doing dialogue. I love playing around with words, and just making the whole thing come to life on the stage. So that pretty much is the playwright's job. And then we have the composer who comes in and writes original songs, out of that come out of the scenes, and take place in either it's a solo, or it's a full cast, or some variation thereof. But it's a group effort. And then Dan Postema, who's our producer, he's involved in it very closely as well. So that's our team, and we've been having fun. We're on our 14th musical right now.
Wow.
And The Confession was our first. So that's, we're hoping to just keep going with the others. But we've been having a good time up in different areas in the country, Amish country. We were in Indiana, and Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania.
Wow. Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. As I was watching the screener, I just marveled at how it's a musical, but it's like a movie at the same time. And so you get the musical feel. Even with the backdrops, they were just stunning as you're looking at it as a movie. It almost, like when the people were standing in front of the background, depending on where the camera actually was, it almost looked like you were right there. They were there, like a movie. Whereas then they would pull back and you got the theater feel, this is a live kind of thing, almost as if it were live. Right. But it was not performed live, correct? I know it was live, but there were cuts and takes and redos. Is that right?
What happened was we had 2 nights of filming, and they were live shows. Okay. And they were about 1,000 people each night. They were sold out, and they filmed both nights. And then after that, they took, bits and pieces from each night. And then they also staged a few that added, and then some atmosphere filming that they did to get the surroundings and whatnot. So it was an adventure to blend the two, and it was an exciting part of the whole project, was that it was not only you're seeing a live show, but it's also a movie. And so that was an interesting thing to do, but we sure enjoyed it, and the audience seemed to enjoy it. They were very positive about it, and we're hoping that all across the country, because it's going to be in 1,500 theaters, and we're hoping that we're taking people to Amish country if they can't get there, or we're whetting their appetite if they would like to come and see some of the other shows. So that was the opportunity that came to film it, and And then the film is also going to be on Up TV around Easter. So
wonderful. That is wonderful. And I think if I have it right, is it February 20? Do I have that right?
Yes,
Is that when it's
that's
out?
going to be in the
Theaters.
February 20th, 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock showings at their local time, but they can go to Fathom, their website, fathomevents.com, or they could go to confessionmusicalmovie.com.
Yes.
And you can buy your tickets there, and all the information will be there.
Yeah, I already looked for Lexington. I just put in my zip code. It's so easy to do, and they brought it up and the different showings. So it's here, and I can't wait to actually go see it. I want to circle back a little bit to one of the things I've already read in your bio, and it says, since 2010, she, talking about you, has spent much of her time developing and writing projects that are fun, engaging, intense, and hilarious. So what does all of that mean? How do you find all of that and put all that together?
Well, I just love to, like I was saying, when I'm reading the books, they jump out at me because you just are, you know what you're looking for, and when you see it, it just jumps out at you. But I like, and the whole team, we enjoy that, where the audience can come and they're going to laugh, they're going to be moved, they're going to hear a message, as far as, it's not preachy, but it's going to move your heart.
Absolutely.
And you're going to leave with the feeling of hope and just a good feeling. And that's a nice way to leave a theater.
I love that. Yes. And I love Shonda Pierce anyway. So as I was watching that, it is funny. I mean, I was laughing out loud as I'm watching parts of this. She did such a great job. And it was all like Shonda-ish. Do you know what I mean? I mean, she brought a lot of who we know her to be into that character. I was like, just all her amazing expressions. It was just so funny. But, that thing of humor and laughter is so important. And so often, sometimes I can go my whole day long and I'm like, oh my gosh, all this whole day, I have not smiled one time. Have you ever done that? You recognize that maybe you're just in a funk or something. And the power, though, of smiling and laughter and humor, why do you think that is so important? For me, I kind of know it's a game changer. And if I can kind of tap into that a little bit more. But what do you think about just the whole humor and laughter thing? Why is that such a big deal for Christians or anybody?
It's very, number one, it was a gift from God. He gave us the equipment to laugh, so he intended for us to use it. There's very little body parts that we don't use every day, and that's one of them, that he gave us that equipment to laugh. But I also think that it's very hard to be down in the middle of a belly laugh. It just goes away. You cannot possibly think about anything depressing when you're belly laughing.
That's right.
And you feel good afterwards. You had a belly laugh, especially one of those that just goes on and on, where you're bouncing off of each other, and it one tops another one, and it just goes. But there's such a good feeling after that you would think we'd use it more often. And we'd allow ourselves. Usually when you don't laugh, there's something that you're holding back. You're saying that this part of life is so bad I can't laugh. And sometimes that's the truth, but laughter does help you get through it. And we all know life can be tough, and maybe you can't laugh about what you're going through, but find some place over here where you can laugh, because it does take your mind off of the hard things, at least briefly, and makes you feel better, and it makes it that much easier to do it the next time. And it's a tool. It's another medication that's totally natural, and we can use it as often. There's no limit to how many times you can use it per day, and it lasts you. It just really gets you through life.
Right. Do you know Jane Jenkins Herlong by chance? She wrote Southern Tea. She's an author and Christian comedian, and she is so funny. And I interviewed her, and I promised to you, Martha, the whole time I cried the whole time laughing. It was like, I'm like, my listeners, they're never going to be able to hear us because it's just nothing but us laughing. It was just so fun. But what do you do personally, like to foster laughter in your life and humor? What do you, any tips for us? What can we do?
Well, I'm always on the lookout for it. So I'll if I see something funny in my head, I'll say something or I'll say it out loud, but I'm constantly doing that. So I'm always cracking myself up, even if it's at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll just, some thought comes in and you just go with it. And so I do that. I watch funny movies if I can. I love to watch old funny, some of the funny old sitcoms that
Yes.
so many of us, they're treasures that we've got. And before long, you're watching those things, especially if you're going like YouTube or one of those, and you're going from one to the next. And before long, you've realized you've laughed a whole hour or you've laughed 2 hours, and it's contagious. It's something that you find yourself, getting sucked into really quickly because you're laughing. And I just, if I get down or whatnot, I do those kinds of things, or I usually find something funny to laugh at. It doesn't take much. And I'm on the lookout for it all the time. I love it when somebody will say, hey, look at this, or here's a funny video or whatnot. And if it's something that I'm not, if it's a downer, then I'll, leave it and go to something that's going to make me laugh, because I just know the health benefits of it. And then also just makes your day go easier if you've laughed a lot during the day. But there's so much to laugh about in life. It really is.
Yeah, my husband and I, it's one of the things I love about him is that we laugh so daggone much. And I mean, it doesn't take much, and we'll then just get on a roll, because that's the kind of team that we are. I always tell him, we're just the best team. But a part of that is that we share so many silly little things together and just laugh. And it's a real gift. And I think it's such a privilege to have that in a relationship. So I marvel also how you, Martha, you wrote for Bob Hope, and you wrote Mark Lowry, I think, even, right? But are you literally, when you do that, do you write their jokes for them, or what does that look like?
Yeah, well, first of all, you have to get to know their voice. And for the different ones, with Mark, I've written for Shonda and different comedians, Phyllis Diller, but you learn their voice, so that whatever you write, the joke that you're writing, it's tailored to them. It sounds like them, so that when they're delivering it, it sounds like something that came off of the top of their head, or they, it's in their style, it's in their voice. So it takes a little bit to, go back and forth, and then you start seeing, especially if it's a new comic to you, you go back and forth, and then you see what they like, and then the ones they pass over, or the ones that they like, and you start seeing, okay, well, this didn't quite sound like them, but this one does. And then after a few times, then you really nail their voice, and then you just, it's second nature to you. Okay, I'm writing for this person right now, and you write in their voice. And it's something that you learn, you have to train yourself to do it. And men or women, I've learned to do that, because when I started in church, when I was roasting the pastors and the different people, it was often men that I was writing for. So I had that skill of knowing that voice. And then, then you write for Phyllis Diller, you write for, somebody else, another female, and then you learn their voice, whatever their voice is. So
what a gift. Such a gift. Yeah. Do you have like a favorite joke or a favorite story? Any funny story you could share that comes to mind?
Oh, there's so many funny stories that have happened with with each of them. I am in the middle of writing my memoirs right now. So
Good.
I'm going through and remembering all of these funny times that happened with the different ones. I remember one, it's not so funny, but it kind of ended up funny. But I was delivering jokes to Bob Hope's house, and he had a dog named Snow Job, and he was this big dog, and he came up as I'm walking down, and I was always a little afraid of him because he was so big.
So big.
But I dropped the material off at his assistant's desk, and then as I'm walking out, that he came up to me, the dog did, and then he starts putting his nose down by my feet, and then quick as anything, he just took a plug out of the top of my foot. So
he bit you? He bit you?
Yeah. That's what they thought of the jokes, I guess. I don't know. But the next day I got a telegram from Bob Hope that, and they had taken care of me as far as like getting me to the doctor, the ER and whatnot with the bite. But I got a telegram from him because he had been on a plane getting ready to leave, and so he couldn't do it before he left. But when he landed, then he sent me a telegram that said, "Dear Martha, please come back soon. I'm ready for another hors d'oeuvre. Love, Snow Job." So he made it okay. So.
Oh no. That's too funny. Oh my goodness. Well, so you mentioned your memoir. Is that what's kind of next for you, Martha? What's on tap for you?
Yeah, that's what I'm in the middle of. Well, I'm working on about 3 right now, but that one I'm having
three memoirs?
Three different books.
Okay. One for each, like, oh, this Martha.
Well, no, the other 2 are different, but
Gotcha.
The memoir is it's been fun because I pretty much saved everything from my whole career. So I'm going through all of these scrapbooks and books and photographs, and I'm just having such a fun time getting it all put together, and looking forward to it coming out. But it shows, I could see in looking at it that journey, that path, that so much was orchestrated for me, and I didn't. You don't see it at the time, although you see it a little bit, and you go, "Oh, this is really neat." But then you look back on it later, and you go, if I had done this, it would have went this way, and if I didn't do this, it would have went this way. And you see how it all just came together, and so it's been fun. It's the right time for me to get it all down. I've got quite a body of work as far as all these memories. So
oh my, I would say condensing that would be really difficult.
Yeah.
But you would be using your skill even in your own life, and all of that literature and all that work and the scrapbooks and the images and the different pursuits. I'm sure you're just skimming and scanning for those that really stand out and that you want to put in that memoir. So that's curious too, to think it's all kind of coming full circle in a way. Well, who would you thank most in your life? Who's been most influential for you? Or is there anyone you would say, if I could thank this person from my journey, and we'll just say God aside, because I know you're grateful and thankful to the Lord. You've even mentioned that, and how you see his handiwork in your life, and those touch points, those moments where he's so guided you and directed you. But is there anyone else in your life that you would be especially appreciative of or grateful toward?
And it's hard to pick the one, but definitely my husband at the beginning, because I was, and all the way through, but I was doing other work at the time when I started selling to comedians, and I was, I'd work on the jokes that I would send. I'd send them in, and they were buying, Phyllis Diller being one of them, and different ones. And I had it in my heart. I got this feeling that if I went for it, meaning, because you only have so many hours in the day. So I thought, well, if I quit my job that I had and really put all my efforts into this, I thought that it might happen. And I told him that, and he gave me the best piece of advice. He said, well, if you're going to do that, then treat it like a real job and put in a real job, real job hours and real job efforts, even though you don't have a boss, but do that. And I did. And that was a great piece of advice, because, at the beginning, you're not selling as, it doesn't start right away. So there was a lot of faith. It got pretty tough there for a while, but I kept doing the, 8 hours a day, writing and writing and writing and writing and writing, and submitting and submitting and submitting. So definitely that piece of advice, and then all the support through the years, of course. And then the other person would be Gene Parrott, who is the one that recommended me to Bob Hope. That was life-changing when he did that. He opened that door, and he was such an encouragement to me all the way through. He walked me through, because I tend to be shy. And so in the writers' meetings, it was just me and all these guys. And in the writers' meetings, I would be quiet. I would hold back. And he was the one that kept pushing me to speak up more, and kept, if we needed to go into Bob's dressing room, he would say, come on, Martha, come with me. And he just kept opening both literal doors and creative doors that I'm forever grateful to him. He totally changed my life.
Oh, indeed. And what a wonderful tribute there. I see the book that you have about the letters and the correspondence. Can you just talk for a second about that, Martha?
What an opportunity that was. And the neatest thing about it is this started when Bob was alive. And I had come across the letters that these soldiers from World War II had written him. And I was so moved by the relationship that he had with these soldiers, and that they just adored him. But it was funny, it was serious, it was they called him dad, and he called them sons. He adopted, they'd asked him to adopt them. And I mean, it was just this real fun relationship that comes to life in all of these letters that they were writing him. And so I asked Bob if he had ever thought of putting him in a book, and he thought that would be a great idea, but he said he couldn't do it because they were so close to his heart. He said, I can't go back and read those. So he told me to speak with his daughter, Linda, who was one of his producers at the time, producing his shows. And so we met and started talking about the letters and putting the book together. We met with some publishers, and then what happens in Hollywood, you get onto other projects, and we were doing other things for Bob, and it just, got put aside for a little while. Well, then he passed away, and I didn't know where the book stood after that. And I had moved here to Tennessee. So I didn't know. Every time I'd come across the manuscript, because got pretty far along in it. And I just felt, oh man, this would make such a great book, with all these letters and whatnot. So then I get contacted by Linda, his daughter, and she says, would you like to go get back on that book? Yes. And oh my goodness, I was so excited. So jumped back into it. By then, the letters had gone up to the Library of Congress, and before we were working on it, they were all at his house. But this time it was they were up at the Library of Congress, and so now I'm in Tennessee. So I would go up to DC and worked there, and finished the research, and then just started writing it. And I'd send it to Linda, and we'd go back and forth. And it was going to come out in 2020, but it because of COVID and whatnot, it didn't. But it came out in 2021, which we all still needed hope.
Right.
And he's known for his timing. Bob Hope was known for his timing, and so I think it came out when it needed to come out, and it's just been very well received. The veterans love it, and it really tells the why of their relationship, and you get an understanding of why they were so connected and why he did so much for the military, and who he was. It's the world was blessed to have him for 100 years. He just didn't give up, and what a not only what a career, which he certainly had, but what a heart, man. What a heart.
And what is the title of the book? The full title, Dear Bob?
Dear Bob, Bob Hope's wartime correspondence with the GIs of World War II.
Okay, very good. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I was excited. I had watched an interview on YouTube where you were talking about that, and I thought, oh, that is phenomenal. And then there I see the book on the left of the screen there. So thank you so much for sharing that little bit. And I'm just so delighted in your ministry, and I'm so delighted that you have taken time to come on the show today, Martha. I can't wait for the audience to go see the Confession musical on February 20th, at least in Lexington. That's the day it's showing around the country. You can get the actual cinema to go to and the show times, but just by putting in your zip code on, what is the name of that website again where you can do that, Martha?
Well, you could go to confessionmusicalmovie.com,
okay,
and then Fathom events. Yeah,
that's right. Fathom events, and stick your zip code in there and you can get the nearest theater to you to watch that. So, and support the wonderful message that you're going to hear in this particular movie. And also, when you watch it, you'll be saying, hey, I now have a little snippet into the life of the playwright, someone who was so intimately involved in the production of that work. So we thank you so much. I couldn't be more delighted that you came on today. Thank you so much, Martha.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes.